Hey there, everyone! Welcome back to my channel where we dive deep into the world of movies that pack a punch, thrill your senses, and leave you thinking long after the credits roll. Today, I'm super excited to talk about a film that's become a modern action classic, The Equalizer from 2014. If you haven't seen it yet, trust me, you're in for a treat. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about this movie, from its gripping story setup to the incredible talent behind it. All without giving away any spoilers, because I want you to experience the twists and turns yourself. By the end of this, you'll see why this is a must-watch for anyone who loves intense action, deep character development, and a hero you can't help but root for. So, grab your popcorn, settle in, and let's get into why The Equalizer should be next on your watch list. First off, let's set the stage. The Equalizer is an action thriller that hit theaters on September 26, 2014. And it's directed by the masterful Antoine Fuqua. If you're not familiar with Fuqua, he's the guy behind some powerhouse films like Training Day, which won Denzel Washington his Oscar, and Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. His style is all about raw intensity, realistic fight scenes, and characters that feel real and relatable. In The Equalizer, Fuqua brings that same energy, creating a world that's gritty, atmospheric, and edge-of-your-seat exciting. The movie runs for about 132 minutes, which is just the right length to build tension without dragging, and it's rated R for strong bloody violence and language throughout, so it's definitely for mature audiences who can handle some hard-hitting action. Now, at the heart of this film is Denzel Washington, who plays the lead role of Robert McCall. Denzel is one of those actors who elevates every project he's in. Think Glory, Malcolm X, The Hurricane. He's got 2 Oscars and a ton of nominations under his belt. In The Equalizer, he delivers a performance that's quiet, calculated, and utterly captivating. His character is a retired intelligence officer living a low-key life, working at a home improvement store called Home Mart, which is inspired by real big-box stores like Home Depot. McCall is the kind of guy who reads classic books. He's going through The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway in the film. And he frequents a local diner where he chats with folks from all walks of life. But beneath that calm exterior is a man with skills, and when injustice crosses his path, he steps up in ways that are both clever and brutal. Denzel was 59 when he filmed this, and he trained extensively for the role, learning close-quarters combat and even how to use everyday tools as weapons. It's inspiring to see him in such top form, proving that age is just a number when it comes to action heroes. Opposite Denzel is a stellar supporting cast that adds so much depth. Chloë Grace Moretz plays Terry, a young woman who's caught in a tough spot, and she brings this vulnerability mixed with strength that's perfect for the role. Moretz was only 16 during filming, but she'd already made a name for herself in films like Kick-Ass and Let Me In. Her chemistry with Denzel is electric. It's like a mentor-protege dynamic that's heartfelt and drives a lot of the emotional core. Then there's Marton Csokas as Teddy, the main antagonist. Csokas, a New Zealand actor known for roles in The Lord of the Rings and XXX, plays this cold, ruthless enforcer for the Russian mob with such menace that you feel the threat every time he's on screen. His accent work and physical presence make him a formidable foe. Rounding out the cast are some great character actors. David Harbour plays Masters, a corrupt cop who's all bluster and intimidation. You might recognize him from Stranger Things, where he plays Hopper. Bill Pullman and Melissa Leo appear as Brian and Susan Plummer, old friends of McCall's from his past life. They're a real-life couple, which adds authenticity to their scenes. Pullman is famous for Independence Day, and Leo won an Oscar for The Fighter. There's also Johnny Skortis as Ralphie, McCall's co-worker who's trying to better himself by training to be a security guard. Haley Bennett plays Mandy, another diner regular, and David Meunier is Slavi, a sleazy club owner. Even smaller roles like Antoine Harris as Dice or Alan Maldonado as Marcus add flavor to the ensemble. The casting was spot on, with Fuqua handpicking actors who could bring nuance to their parts. Let's talk about the story without spoiling anything. The Equalizer is loosely based on the 1980s TV series of the same name, created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim, which starred Edward Woodward as a vigilante helping the helpless. The film updates that concept for modern times, focusing on themes of justice, redemption, and standing up against corruption. McCall places ads in newspapers offering to equalize odds for people in need, But the movie kicks off when he encounters Terry at the diner and decides to help her out of a dangerous situation involving Russian gangsters. From there, it escalates into a high-stakes cat-and-mouse game. The script was written by Richard Wenk, who drew inspiration from the TV show, but made it darker and more contemporary. Wenk has worked on films like The Mechanic and Jack Reacher Never Go Back, so he knows how to craft taut action narratives. Production-wise, this movie had a budget of about $55 million, which is modest for a big action flick, but they made every dollar count. It was produced by Columbia Pictures, part of Sony, along with Village Roadshow Pictures and Escape Artists. Todd Black, Jason Blumenthal, and Steve Tisch were key producers, with Denzel himself also producing through his company. Filming took place mostly in Massachusetts, standing in for Boston to capture that urban, working-class vibe. Locations included a real Home Depot store in Tewksbury, Massachusetts, which they renamed Home Mart for the film. They shot night scenes at a diner in Chelsea and action sequences in abandoned warehouses and on rainy streets to amp up the atmosphere. The crew faced some challenges, like dealing with New England weather, but it added to the film's moody look. The cinematography is handled by Mauro Fiore, who won an Oscar for Avatar. He uses a lot of wide shots to show the isolation of characters and tight close-ups during intense moments. The color palette is desaturated, with blues and grays dominating to give it a noir feel. Editing by John Refuah keeps the pace brisk, especially in the fight scenes, which are choreographed by Keith Woolard and his team. These aren't your typical over-the-top Hollywood brawls. They're grounded, using household items like corkscrews, hammers, and power tools in creative ways. Denzel did many of his own stunts, training with Navy SEALs and MMA fighters to make it authentic. The violence is graphic but purposeful, showing the consequences without glorifying it. Music plays a huge role in setting the tone. The score is composed by Harry Gregson Williams, known for The Chronicles of Narnia and Man on Fire, another Denzel Fuqua collab. It's a mix of electronic pulses and orchestral swells that build suspense. There's also a killer soundtrack with songs like Guts Over Fear by Eminem featuring Sia, which plays over the end credits. It was specifically written for the film and even got a Grammy nomination. Other tracks include Midnight Train to Georgia by Gladys Knight and the Pips, adding a touch of soul, and New Dawn Fades by Moby for a haunting vibe. The sound design is top-notch, with every punch, gunshot, and raindrop crystal clear, thanks to the team led by sound mixer David Esparza. Behind the scenes, there are some cool stories. Denzel and Fuqua had worked together before on Training Day in 2001, so their reunion was highly anticipated. Fuqua pushed for practical effects over CGI, like real explosions and car chases, to keep it realistic. The Russian mob elements were researched extensively, consulting with experts on organized crime to make the villains believable. Chloë Grace Moretz had to learn some Russian phrases for her role, and she bonded with Denzel over books and acting tips. The film was originally going to star Russell Crowe, but when he dropped out, Denzel stepped in, and it was a perfect fit. Pre-production started in 2010, but it took a few years to get rolling due to script rewrites. When it came to release, The Equalizer premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 7, 2014, where it got rave reviews for its action and Washington's performance. It opened in theaters worldwide, grossing over $192 million at the box office, which was a huge success given the budget. In the US, it debuted at number 1, pulling in $34 million in its opening weekend. Internationally, it did well in places like the UK, Australia, and Russia, ironically, given the plot. Home video sales were strong too, with Blu-ray and DVD releases, including extras like deleted scenes, commentary tracks from Fuqua and Washington, and featurettes on the stunts and character backstories. Critically, the movie holds a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, but the audience score is a solid 76%, showing it's a crowd pleaser. Reviewers praised the direction, acting, and action sequences, though some noted it follows familiar vigilante tropes. Roger Ebert's site gave it 3 stars, calling it efficient and entertaining. The New York Times highlighted Washington's charisma, saying he makes the film irresistible. It was nominated for several awards, including NAACP Image Awards for Outstanding Actor for Denzel and Outstanding Motion Picture. At the People's Choice Awards, it won Favorite Dramatic Movie. What makes The Equalizer stand out is its blend of heart and hardcore action. It's not just about fights. It's about a man finding purpose again, helping those who can't help themselves. Themes of morality, vengeance, and second chances resonate deeply, especially in today's world where injustice feels all too common. Fuqua draws from real-life issues like human trafficking and corruption, making it feel relevant without being preachy. The film's pacing starts slow, building McCall's ordinary life, then ramps up to explosive climaxes that had audiences cheering in theaters. If you're a fan of films like Taken with Liam Neeson or John Wick with Keanu Reeves, this is right up your alley. In fact, it predates John Wick by a few months and shares that same stylish revenge vibe. But The Equalizer has more emotional depth, thanks to Washington's layered performance. It spawned a franchise, too, sequels in 2018 and 2023, both with Denzel and Fuqua returning, expanding McCall's world. There's even talk of more, but the original stands alone perfectly. Visually, the movie is a feast. Production designer Naomi Chauhan created sets that feel lived in, from McCall's sparse apartment to the opulent mob hideouts. Costume designer David C. Robinson dressed characters authentically, Denzel's in simple work clothes contrasting with the villain's slick suits. Makeup and hair teams, led by Carl Fullerton, added realism, like scars and tattoos that tell stories without words. One fun fact: the film's title comes from McCall's ability to equalize unfair situations, a nod to the TV show where the character used a newspaper ad to offer help. In the movie, it's more subtle, but that essence remains. Another detail: Denzel insisted on no romantic subplot for his character, keeping the focus on justice and mentorship. As we wrap this up, I have to say, The Equalizer is more than just an action movie. It's a character study wrapped in thrills. It reminds us that one person can make a difference, and it's empowering to watch. Whether you're into high-octane sequences, strong performances, or stories with moral weight, this film delivers on all fronts. So, if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor. Stream it, rent it, buy it. You'll thank me later. And if you have seen it, maybe it's time for a rewatch. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Hit that like button, subscribe for more movie deep dives, and let me know in the comments what you think of The Equalizer or what film I should cover next. Until then, keep watching great cinema. Wait, I could go on forever about this movie because there's so much to unpack. Let's dive a bit deeper into the technical aspects that make it shine. The visual effects, handled by companies like Zero VFX and Industrial Light and Magic, are subtle but effective. Think enhanced rainstorms and bullet impacts that look real without overpowering the practical stunts. The film's aspect ratio is 2.35 to 1, giving it that wide cinematic scope perfect for action. On the writing side, Richard Wenck's script went through several drafts. Initially, it was more faithful to the TV series, but they modernized it to include elements like technology and global crime networks. Wenck researched vigilante justice and even shadowed hardware store employees to get the details right for McCall's job. Casting stories are fascinating too. Chloë Grace Moretz auditioned multiple times, impressing with her ability to convey trauma subtly. Marton Csokas prepared by studying Russian mafia documentaries and working on his accent with a coach. David Harbour bulked up for his role, gaining weight to look more imposing. Filming lasted about 60 days, from June to September 2013, with a tight schedule to capture summer locations before fall. They used Arri Alexa cameras for that crisp digital look, and Steadicam operators followed the action seamlessly. One challenging scene involved a massive set piece in a warehouse, where they built a full-scale interior with working machinery for authenticity. The marketing campaign was clever, with trailers emphasizing Denzel's stoic hero and the tagline, "What do you see when you look at me?" Posters showed him in shadow, building mystery. Sony promoted it heavily at Comic-Con and through online teasers. Reception-wise, it scored 7.2 on IMDb from over 400,000 ratings, and on Metacritic, it's at 57 from critics, but 72 from users. Fans love the empowerment fantasy, while critics sometimes wished for more originality. But overall, it's praised for revitalizing the vigilante genre. Influences include classic films like Death Wish and Taxi Driver, but with a modern twist. Fuqua cites Sergio Leone westerns for the slow build tension. For trivia buffs, Denzel's character times his fights with a stopwatch, a detail that adds to his methodical nature. The diner scenes were shot in a real 24-hour spot, with extras who were actual locals. The franchise expansion, The Equalizer 2 in 2018 grossed $190 million, and The Equalizer 3 in 2023 did $191 million, showing enduring appeal. There's also a TV reboot with Queen Latifah, proving the concept's versatility. In terms of cultural impact, the movie boosted interest in the original TV series, now streaming on platforms. It inspired fan art, memes, and even DIY weapon tutorials, safely, of course. If you're just joining us or picking up from where we left off last time, we're deep into why The Equalizer from 2014 is one of those films you absolutely need to experience. I'm your narrator here, walking you through every layer of this powerhouse movie like we're sitting together watching it unfold. No spoilers, I promise. Just pure excitement, facts, trivia, and all the juicy details to convince you this is the next film you should fire up tonight. We've already covered the basics. Antoine Fuqua directing, Denzel Washington leading with that unmatched intensity, the solid $55 million budget that stretched far thanks to smart filmmaking, the Boston area shooting locations that give it such a grounded, gritty feel, and how it pulled in over $192 million worldwide. But there's so much more to unpack. Let's keep rolling and explore even deeper into what makes this movie tick. One thing that really sets The Equalizer apart is how personal it became for its star. Denzel Washington didn't just show up and say the lines, he shaped the character in big ways. The original script didn't have much backstory for Robert McCall, so Denzel stepped in and added layers, including giving him obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. He spent time interviewing real people who live with OCD to get it right, making those little habits, like timing everything with his stopwatch or arranging things precisely, feel authentic and human. It turns McCall from just a tough guy into someone you understand on a deeper level. Denzel was already in incredible shape at 59, but he ramped up his training even more. He worked with ex-Navy SEALs and fight choreographers to master those close-quarters combat moves. The fights aren't flashy Hollywood stuff. They're precise, brutal, and use whatever's at hand. Think hardware store tools turned into deadly instruments. Denzel did a lot of his own stunts, and you can feel the commitment in every scene. Speaking of those action sequences, Antoine Fuqua wanted everything to look and feel real. No heavy CGI reliance here. He pushed for practical effects. Explosions, car impacts, and those intense warehouse battles were mostly done for real, with stunt teams coordinating everything safely but intensely. The famous hardware store showdown? They built and rigged a real set inspired by actual Home Depot layouts, filming in places like Haverhill, Massachusetts, where they turned a store into Home Mart. Other spots included Chelsea for the diner scenes, that moody late-night vibe with rain-slicked streets, and Hamilton, Ipswich, Swampscott, and Salisbury for the urban grit. Boston's T subway even makes an appearance, though eagle-eyed viewers might spot a flipped shot in one quick transition. Fuqua's team used the New England weather to their advantage, letting those stormy nights add tension without faking it. Chloë Grace Moretz's role as Terry, also known as Alina, was originally written for someone older, maybe in her mid-20s. But Chloë, who was just 16 at the time, fought hard for the part. She auditioned multiple times, impressing Fuqua so much that he adjusted the character to fit her age. To prepare, she did serious research, even talking to real people in difficult situations to understand the vulnerability and strength needed. Her scenes with Denzel are some of the film's emotional highlights. They build this quiet, protective bond that feels genuine. It's mentor-like, heartfelt, and gives the action real stakes. Marton Csokas as Teddy brings chilling menace. He studied Russian mafia behaviors and nailed that cold, calculating accent. David Harbour's corrupt cop role shows off his ability to play intimidating yet flawed, long before he became a household name as Hopper in Stranger Things. Smaller parts shine too. Johnny Scortis as Ralphie, the earnest co-worker training to be a security guard, adds warmth and humor. Haley Bennett as Mandy, the diner waitress, brings everyday relatability. Bill Pullman and Melissa Leo as old contacts from McCall's past feel authentic, partly because they're a real-life couple off-screen. The music deserves its own shout-out. Harry Gregson Williams crafted a score that's tense and pulsing, mixing synths with orchestral builds to ramp up suspense. The soundtrack features gems like Eminem's Guts Over Fear with Sia over the credits. It was made specifically for the film and even earned Grammy buzz. Classic tracks like Gladys Knight and the Pips' Midnight Train to Georgia tie into fun character moments. and Moby's New Dawn fades adds haunting atmosphere. Sound design is crisp. Every tool clank, raindrop, and impact hits hard, thanks to pros who captured that realism. Production stories are endless. Originally, Russell Crowe was attached, but when things shifted, Denzel came on board, and it felt destined. Fuqua and Denzel had that training day magic from 2001, so reuniting was electric. Producers Todd Black, Jason Blumenthal, Steve Tisch, and others at Escape Artists and Village Roadshow kept the budget tight at around $55 million. Some estimates say up to $73 million after marketing, but they maximized it with location shooting and practical work. Filming ran from May to September 2013, about 60 days, dealing with Massachusetts weather but capturing authentic seasons. Pre-production started years earlier, with Richard Wenk rewriting to modernize the 1980s TV series concept. Less gadget-heavy spy stuff, more grounded vigilante justice against real-world evils like corruption and trafficking. The premiere at Toronto International Film Festival in September 2014 had crowds buzzing. Test screenings scored incredibly high for an R-rated Sony film. People loved the empowerment, the clever kills, and Denzel's charisma. It opened #1 domestically with over $34 million, then kept climbing to $101.5 million in North America and nearly $91 million overseas. Critically, it got mixed but respectful reviews, 60% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, but 76% from audiences who connected with the justice fantasy. Denzel earned NAACP Image Award nods, and the film won Favorite Dramatic Movie at People's Choice. Roger Ebert's site gave it 3 stars, praising its efficiency and Washington's pull. What keeps fans coming back? It's that blend, slow-burn character building in McCall's quiet life, reading Hemingway, diner chats, helping co-workers, then explosive, methodical payback when pushed. Themes of redemption, protecting the vulnerable, and moral lines hit hard without preaching. It's influenced by classics like Death Wish or Leone westerns, but feels fresh with its timing gimmick and everyday weapon creativity. The franchise grew from here, The Equalizer 2 in 2018 and 3 in 2023, both huge successes, and even a TV reboot with Queen Latifah shows the idea's staying power. Visually, Mauro Fiore's cinematography uses desaturated blues and grays for a noir edge, wide shots for loneliness, tight frames for intensity. Naomi Chauhan's production design makes sets feel lived in. McCall's sparse apartment screams discipline. Costumes keep it simple. Denzel's work shirts contrast the villain's flash. Makeup adds scars and realism that tell silent stories. Trivia nuggets. McCall's stopwatch timing adds to his precision obsession. The diner was a real 24-hour spot with local extras. Denzel pushed to avoid romance for his character, keeping focus on justice and mentorship. One fun callback, the Pip joke ties into a song choice later. The film boosted interest in the original Edward Woodward series. In a sea of blockbusters, The Equalizer stands out for grounding thrills in reality. One man making a difference feels empowering, especially now. If you love Taken, John Wick, or character-driven action, this is gold. Stream it, rewatch it, it's timeless. But before we fully wrap this up and I let you go hit play on the movie, let me share even more of the fascinating layers that make The Equalizer 2014 feel so alive and rewatchable even a decade later. One of the coolest things about this film is how faithfully yet creatively it honors its television roots while carving out its own identity. The original 1980s series, created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim, followed a mysterious former intelligence agent who placed classified ads in newspapers offering his services to people who had nowhere else to turn. That simple idea. Got a problem? Odds against you? Call The Equalizer. Became iconic. Edward Woodward brought a quiet, world-weary dignity to the role that Denzel Washington echoes beautifully in 2014, but with a modern edge. Sloan himself served as executive producer on the film, and you can feel his influence in the way the story respects the source material without feeling like a dusty reboot. The newspaper ad concept is still there, but it's handled in a way that feels organic and clever in today's digital world. It's a perfect bridge between nostalgia and fresh storytelling. Let's circle back to Denzel's preparation because it's genuinely inspiring. Beyond the physical training, he dove deep into psychology. He worked with experts on OCD to make sure McCall's rituals, counting steps, Timing tasks with that iconic stopwatch, arranging objects just so, felt lived in rather than gimmicky. Denzel has said in interviews that he wanted the audience to sense a man who had seen too much darkness and was trying to build a normal life, only to have that peace shattered. That internal struggle is what makes every decision he makes feel weighty and real. He even adjusted dialogue on set to make McCall's speech patterns more precise and deliberate, matching the character's meticulous nature. It's the kind of actor-driven detail that turns a good performance into a legendary one. On the villain side, Marton Csokas went to extraordinary lengths. He spent weeks studying Russian organized crime documentaries, worked with a dialect coach for that icy Eastern European accent, and even trained in Krav Maga to make his fight scenes feel authentic and terrifying. His character Teddy isn't just a generic bad guy. He's methodical, patient, and terrifyingly competent, which raises the stakes every time he appears. David Harbour, playing the crooked detective, bulked up significantly for the role and brought a mix of menace and pathetic insecurity that makes you love to hate him. And remember Johnny Scordis as Ralphie? That character's subplot about wanting to become a security guard was inspired by real stories Fuqua heard while researching Home Depot employees. It adds such warmth and humor amid the tension. The practical stunts are another reason this movie feels so visceral. The fight choreography team, led by Keith Woolard, spent months designing sequences that used everyday objects, corkscrews, hammers, nail guns, even a book, in brutally creative ways. Denzel insisted on doing as many of his own fights as possible, and the crew built safety rigs so they could film in tight, confined spaces without CGI cheats. One particular warehouse sequence was shot over several nights in an actual abandoned industrial building in Massachusetts, with real rain machines creating those slick, reflective surfaces you see on screen. The sound team recorded real tool impacts and amplified them in post-production so every hit lands with weight. Cinematographer Mauro Fiore shot the entire film on Arri Alexa cameras, choosing a 2.35:1 aspect ratio to give those wide establishing shots of Boston's working-class neighborhoods a lonely, almost Western feel. The color grade is deliberately desaturated, lots of steel blues, grays, and muted greens, which makes the rare splashes of red, you'll know when you see them, pop dramatically. Production designer Naomi Schoen turned a real Home Depot in Tewksbury into Home Mart, complete with custom signage and stocked shelves that the actors could actually interact with. The apartment McCall lives in was built on a soundstage but based on real, modest Boston rentals. Sparse furniture, perfectly made bed, books stacked neatly. Every detail tells you who this man is before he says a word. The score by Harry Gregson Williams is worth another mention because it's sneaky brilliant. There are moments where the music drops out completely, letting silence and ambient sound do the heavy lifting. Then a low electronic pulse creeps in right before chaos erupts. The end credits song Guts Over Fear by Eminem and Sia wasn't just slapped on. It was written specifically for the film after the studio heard an early cut and realized they needed something that captured McCall's internal fire. Other needle drops like Back to Black by Amy Winehouse in a key scene or the soulful Midnight Train to Georgia during a quiet diner moment feel perfectly placed, never forced. When the film hit theaters in September 2014, the marketing campaign was smart and understated. Trailers focused on Denzel's calm intensity and the tagline, "What do you see when you look at me?" Posters showed him in silhouette against a rainy Boston skyline. Sony ran an innovative online campaign where fans could call a fictional Equalizer hotline and leave messages. Thousands did, and some were even featured in promotional spots. At Comic-Con that year, they screened an extended fight clip that had the crowd roaring. The opening weekend was huge, $34.1 million domestically, and it held strong through October, eventually crossing $100 million in North America and nearly $92 million overseas. In Russia, despite the plot, it actually performed well because audiences loved the action. Critics were divided but respectful. Some called it by-the-numbers vigilante fare, but most praised Denzel's gravitas and Fuqua's efficient direction. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is still 76% today, and IMDb sits comfortably at 7.2 from over 400,000 votes. It won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Dramatic Movie, and Denzel took home the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actor in a Motion Picture. The film also got technical nods for sound editing and fight choreography at various genre awards. On home video, the Blu-ray release came loaded with extras. A full-length commentary track from Fuqua and Washington, deleted scenes that show even more of McCall's daily life, featurettes on the OCD research, stunt training, and a making of the hardware store sequence that's still fascinating to watch. There's even a short segment on how they recreated the feel of the 1980s TV show in modern Boston. Fast forward to 2026, and the legacy is stronger than ever. The sequels, The Equalizer 2 in 2018 and The Equalizer 3 in 2023, both grossed over $190 million each and kept Denzel and Fuqua together, proving the character has legs. There's even a successful TV reboot starring Queen Latifah that's still airing, showing how universal the one person can make a difference idea really is. In today's world, where headlines often feel overwhelming, watching a story about quiet, calculated justice feels oddly comforting and empowering. If you're still on the fence, think about this. The Equalizer is the rare action movie that gets better with repeat viewings. You start noticing the tiny details, the way McCall's watch ticks louder in tense moments, how the lighting changes when he makes a decision, the subtle callbacks to Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea that mirror his own struggle. It's stylish without being flashy, violent without being gratuitous, and deeply human in a genre that often forgets the humanity. So there you have it. Every detail, every behind-the-scenes nugget, every reason this film deserves your time. Whether it's your first watch or your 10th, The Equalizer delivers that perfect mix of heart, brains, and bone-crunching action that keeps you glued to the screen. Go watch it tonight. You'll finish it feeling like you just spent 2 hours in the best company possible, with Denzel Washington quietly evening the odds. If you're still with me, and I hope you are, because we're not done unpacking the brilliance of The Equalizer from 2014. Let's keep the momentum going. I'm your guide through this cinematic gem, sharing every nook and cranny of what makes it a standout, from the tiniest production details to the broader impact it's had on action movies since its release. Remember, no spoilers here. I'm just building the case for why this film deserves a spot in your queue. We've talked about Denzel Washington's transformative performance, Antoine Fuqua's gritty direction, the clever script by Richard Wenk, the stellar supporting cast, the practical stunts, the moody cinematography, the pulsing score, and how it all came together on a $55 million budget to earn over $192 million worldwide. But there's always more to explore in a movie this rich. Let's dive into some of the influences, comparisons, and lasting legacy that keep The Equalizer feeling fresh even in 2026. First, let's think about where this film fits in the pantheon of vigilante thrillers. It draws clear inspiration from classics like Charles Bronson's Death Wish series from the 1970s and 80s, where an ordinary man takes the law into his own hands after personal tragedy. But The Equalizer elevates that formula by making its hero, Robert McCall, a former Black Ops specialist who's trying to leave that life behind. It's not about blind rage, it's about calculated, almost surgical justice. You can also see echoes of Marton Scorsese's Taxi Driver in the way McCall observes the city's underbelly from his quiet corners, the diner, the hardware store, building that slow tension before action erupts. Antoine Fuqua has cited spaghetti westerns by Sergio Leone as a big influence too. Think the good, the bad, and the ugly. Those long stares, the deliberate pacing, the showdowns where every second counts. McCall's stopwatch timing in fights is like a modern twist on those classic standoffs, adding a layer of psychological edge that keeps you hooked. Compared to other modern action flicks, The Equalizer holds its own against Taken with Liam Neeson, which came out a few years earlier in 2008. Both feature older heroes with particular sets of skills protecting the vulnerable, but The Equalizer goes deeper into character psyche. It's less about globe-trotting chases and more about intimate urban warfare. Then there's John Wick from the same year, 2014. Actually, The Equalizer beat it to theaters by a month. Both revitalized the genre with stylish violence and lone wolf protagonists. But while Wick is all about balletic gunfu and mythology, McCall's world is more grounded, using hardware tools instead of high-tech arsenals. It's like the everyman's revenge fantasy. If you loved the precision in Sicario or the moral ambiguity in Man on Fire, another Fuqua-Denzel team-up from 2004, you'll find similar vibes here, but with a Boston twist. Speaking of that Boston setting, the choice of Massachusetts locations wasn't random. Fuqua wanted a city that felt blue-collar and authentic, with its mix of historic charm and modern grit. They filmed in real neighborhoods like Chelsea for the diner exteriors, where late-night shoots captured genuine urban hustle. The Home Mart scenes were done in a Tewksbury Home Depot, renamed for the film, and employees even got cameos as extras. Other spots included the Linway for rainy street chases, an abandoned factory in Salisbury for intense interiors, and even a quick nod to the MBTA subway system. The crew dealt with everything from humid summers to sudden downpours, but those elements added to the film's atmospheric realism. Cinematographer Mauro Fiore used natural light where possible, like in the diner with its neon glow reflecting off wet pavement, creating that noir-ish mood without over-relying on sets. Let's not forget the script's evolution. Richard Wenk started writing in 2010, initially envisioning a more straightforward adaptation of the TV series. But over revisions, he amped up the contemporary issues: corruption in law enforcement, the shadows of organized crime, the plight of those trapped in exploitative situations. Wenk consulted with real ex-intelligence officers to get the details right on McCall's background, though it's left mysterious enough to intrigue. He also wove in literary references, like McCall reading Don Quixote and Invisible Man later in his book list, symbolizing his quest for meaning in a chaotic world. The dialogue is sparse, but sharp. Denzel's delivery makes lines like quiet observations hit like thunder. Fuqua and Wenk worked closely to ensure the action served the story, not the other way around. The supporting cast brings so much texture. Chloë Grace Moretz, as the young woman who sparks McCall's involvement, researched her role by speaking with survivors of tough circumstances, bringing authenticity to her portrayal of resilience amid vulnerability. Marton Csokas modeled Teddy after real mob enforcers, focusing on that unblinking stare that conveys threat without words. David Harbour's character arc as the corrupt cop adds commentary on systemic issues, and his physical transformation, gaining weight and adopting a Boston accent, shows dedication. Bill Pullman and Melissa Leo, as McCall's former colleagues, provide a glimpse into his past without exposition dumps. Their scenes feel like old friends catching up. Even tertiary characters, like the diner owner played by Robert Wahlberg, Mark's brother, or the mob underlings, are fleshed out enough to make the world feel lived in. Music and sound design elevate everything. Harry Gregson Williams' score uses minimalist motifs, repeating piano notes for McCall's routines, swelling strings for building dread, that mirror the character's precision. The soundtrack choices are eclectic but spot on. Soul classics for emotional beats, electronic tracks for tension. Sound editor Mandel Winter and his team layered effects meticulously. The echo of footsteps in empty warehouses, the metallic clang of tools, the muffled rain outside windows, all contributing to immersion. In post-production, they used Dolby Atmos for the theatrical release, making theaters feel like you were right there in the storm. Production anecdotes add flavor. Denzel and Fuqua bonded over their shared history, often improvising to deepen scenes. One day, during a fight rehearsal, Denzel suggested using a corkscrew in a creative way, which made it into the final cut. Chloë Grace Moretz learned basic self-defense for her role, though her character isn't action-heavy. The crew faced a minor setback when a location permit fell through, but they pivoted to a nearby spot seamlessly. Budget-wise, the $55 million went far because Fuqua prioritized story over spectacle. No massive CGI budgets here, just smart, practical work. Upon release, The Equalizer didn't just succeed financially, it sparked conversations. Fans debated McCall's moral code online, and it boosted streams of the original TV series. Critically, while some saw it as formulaic, outlets like Variety praised its satisfying blend of brains and brawn. The film's R rating allowed for unflinching realism, which audiences appreciated. In awards season, it snagged nods at the Saturn Awards for Best Action Film and Best Actor, and Denzel's performance was lauded at the African American Film Critics Association. A decade on, its influence shows in how action heroes are portrayed: older, wiser, more introspective. It paved the way for sequels that explored McCall's backstory further, and the franchise's total gross now exceeds $500 million. The TV reboot with Queen Latifah flips the script gender-wise, but keeps the core ethos. In pop culture, memes of Denzel's intense stare or stopwatch moments still circulate, and it's a go-to for underrated action movies lists. What truly makes The Equalizer worth your time is its empowerment message. In a world where the little guy often gets overlooked, seeing someone step up with skill and heart is cathartic. It's thrilling, thoughtful, and timeless, perfect for a rainy night in or a group watch with friends. Thanks for sticking around. Whether you're binge-watching this deep dive or just jumping in now, we're still rolling through why The Equalizer from 2014 remains one of the most satisfying action thrillers out there. I'm your narrator, laying out every fascinating detail so you can feel like you've lived the making of this film before you even press play. We've covered the stars, the director, the gritty Boston shoots, the practical fights, the music that pulses through every tense moment, the box office triumph of $192 million on a $55 to $73 million budget, and how it launched a franchise that's still going strong in 2026 with sequels and a TV reboot. But let's keep peeling back more layers with some standout trivia, behind-the-scenes secrets, and the thoughtful touches that make this movie feel so personal and powerful. No spoilers, just pure appreciation for the craft. One of the most impressive things about Denzel Washington's Robert McCall is how much he shaped the character himself. The original script didn't give much backstory, so Denzel stepped in and added depth, including giving McCall obsessive-compulsive tendencies. He didn't just decide on it randomly. He interviewed real people living with OCD to understand their daily rituals, like precise timing and orderliness. That stopwatch McCall uses constantly? It's not just a cool prop. It's tied to that methodical mindset Denzel researched so carefully. He trained hard physically too, working with Navy SEALs and fight experts to make those close-quarters takedowns look effortless and realistic. At 59, he was curling heavy weights on set breaks. No stunt double shortcuts here. And you can see the commitment in how controlled and precise every move feels. Chloë Grace Moretz brought her own serious prep to the role. Originally written for an older character, the part shifted when she auditioned and blew everyone away. To portray her vulnerable yet resilient young woman authentically, she did deep research, even speaking with real people in tough situations. The director noted she gained some weight for the role after advice from someone she consulted, focusing on realism over Hollywood polish. Her bond with Denzel on screen feels so natural because they built that trust. It's like watching a quiet, protective friendship form in real time. Marton Csokas as the chilling enforcer, Teddy went all in too. He studied Russian organized crime docs, worked with dialect coaches for that menacing accent, and trained in combat styles to make his presence feel genuinely threatening. His performance isn't over the top. It's cold, patient, and calculated, which makes every confrontation hit harder. David Harbour bulked up for his corrupt cop role, nailing that mix of bluster and insecurity. Even funnier details pop up, like when McCall jokes about being a Pip from Gladys Knight and the Pips, dancing a little for his coworkers. Later, that same song, Midnight Train to Georgia, plays over the store speakers in a tense moment, creating this clever, subtle callback that ties humor to the chaos. The watch McCall wears, a Sunto Core all black, has its own story. In real life, it has altimeter, barometer, and compass features. But in the movie, the stopwatch display was digitally tweaked in post-production to fit the character's timing obsession perfectly. Little touches like that show how much care went into authenticity. And here's a neat Easter egg. The classic Black Jaguar XJ6 from the original 1980s TV series makes a subtle cameo in the background of one scene, a nod to fans of the Edward Woodward version. Test screenings were huge for this film. Apparently, it scored the highest positive reactions of any R-rated Sony movie at the time. Audiences loved the empowerment, the clever kills using everyday items, and Denzel's quiet intensity. Antoine Fuqua pushed for practical effects over CGI, filming real explosions, car impacts, and those hardware store sequences in actual locations like an abandoned Lowe's in Haverhill, Massachusetts. The crew turned Boston into this brooding, noir-ish world, rainy streets, neon-lit diners framed like Edward Hopper paintings, wide shots capturing isolation. It wasn't originally set in Boston. The script started in New York but shifted for budget and vibe, and it worked beautifully, giving the film that wounded working-class soul. Fuqua and Denzel had that rare chemistry from Training Day. In interviews around release, Fuqua talked about how Denzel's everyman appeal grounds the violence. He's relatable, likable, and when he flips the switch, it's terrifyingly effective. Denzel said he trusted Fuqua completely as the captain, no second-guessing on set. Their reunion after years apart felt destined, especially since both had massive success post-training day, but waited for the right project. Fuqua even joked about lifting 50-pound dumbbells outside his trailer, while Denzel focused on the role. The film's legacy in 2026 is rock solid. It kicked off the only franchise Denzel has ever starred in. Fans still ask him about the next one, even his doorman. With The Equalizer 2 and 3 both hitting around $190 million each, and Queen Latifah's TV version keeping the concept alive, the idea of one skilled person evening the odds resonates deeply. It influenced how older action heroes are portrayed: introspective, skilled, moral, without needing capes or gadgets. Critically, it earned a Saturn Award nomination for Denzel, People's Choice nods, and strong audience love despite mixed reviews from some who called it formulaic. But the A Cinema score from crowds says it all. They connected with the justice served, the heart beneath the brutality. It's cathartic, stylish, and rewatchable, with details that reveal more each time. The literary nods in McCall's reading list, the sound design making every tool clank echo, the way silence builds dread before action explodes. If you've made it this far, you're probably as hooked as I am. The Equalizer isn't flashy for flash's sake. It's about purpose, protection, and quiet strength in a noisy world. Grab it tonight. Let Denzel take you on that ride. You'll come out feeling empowered. We're still rolling strong on this epic deep dive into The Equalizer from 2014, the film that turns quiet determination into explosive justice without ever feeling over the top. If you've been listening along, you know we've unpacked Denzel Washington's masterful performance, Antoine Fuqua's sharp direction, the gritty Massachusetts locations that make Boston feel like a character itself, the practical stunts using hardware store tools, the haunting score, the $55 million budget that delivered massive returns, and how it all ties back to the 1980s TV series roots. But there's even more gold in the trivia vault, behind-the-scenes secrets, and those little details that make rewatches so rewarding. Let's keep going and shine a light on some of the coolest, lesser-known facts that show just how much heart and precision went into this movie. One standout element is how Denzel Washington didn't just play Robert McCall, he basically co-created him. The initial script had almost no backstory for the character, so Denzel stepped up big time. He invented a whole internal history, including giving McCall obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. This wasn't a random add-on. Denzel did serious homework. He read up on obsessive-compulsive behavior, developed a personal backstory for himself about why McCall might have these traits, maybe tied to his past life of high-stakes control and precision, and even interviewed several real people living with OCD to get the nuances right. Those little rituals you see, like timing everything with his stopwatch, arranging his apartment just so, or the way he methodically prepares his breakfast, feel authentic because of that research. It adds layers. McCall isn't just a retired operative. He's a man who's built rigid routines to keep the chaos of his old life at bay. When things go sideways, those routines crack, and that's where the tension really builds. Chloë Grace Moretz's prep for her role as Terry was equally committed. The character was originally written for someone older, around 24, but Chloë, who was only 16 during filming, fought hard for the part. She auditioned repeatedly and impressed Antoine Fuqua so much that he aged the role down to fit her. To bring real depth and vulnerability to someone in a dangerous, exploitative situation, she did heavy research. According to Fuqua, she even interviewed real-life escorts and sex workers to understand the world her character was in. One person she spoke with advised her to gain some weight for authenticity, explaining that in that line of work, having some flesh was part of surviving different clients. Chloë adjusted her diet and put on weight specifically for the role, showing how seriously she took portraying that raw humanity. Her scenes with Denzel carry so much weight because of that effort. The quiet mentorship, the shared meals at the diner, the protective glances. It all feels earned. The film's test screenings were off the charts. It reportedly scored the highest positive reactions and feedback of any R-rated Sony film up to that point. Audiences went wild for the empowerment fantasy, the inventive kills, all those everyday objects turned weapons, and especially Denzel's calm, unstoppable presence. That kind of reaction doesn't happen by accident. Fuqua and the team crafted something that hit the sweet spot between brutal action and moral satisfaction. Speaking of those action beats, McCall is never once shown firing a gun himself. Think about that. In a high body count thriller, the hero uses improvised tools, forces others to shoot accidentally, scopes with a rifle but doesn't pull the trigger on it, and relies on nail guns, corkscrews, and sheer precision instead. It's a deliberate choice that keeps him feeling like a calculated equalizer rather than a trigger-happy vigilante. The nail gun in the final showdown? It's a real Ramset master-shot power nailer, the kind used on construction sites with .22 caliber charges to drive nails into concrete or steel. Super dangerous in real life, but choreographed perfectly for the screen. Fun callbacks abound too. Early on, when co-workers ask McCall what he did before Home Mart, he jokes that he was a Pip from Gladys Knight and the Pips, and does a little dance. Later, when the bad guys are holding everyone hostage in the store, McCall blasts "Midnight Train to Georgia" over the PA system to draw their attention. Same group, same song. Perfect poetic tie-in. There's even a subtle nod to the original TV series. The classic black Jaguar XJ6 that Edward Woodward's Equalizer drove shows up in the background during one scene, parked quietly like an old friend paying respects. The watch McCall wears is a Sunto Core all-black. Tough, functional military grade with altimeter, barometer, and compass features. But the stopwatch display was digitally altered in post-production to match the movie's needs exactly. It's those tiny tweaks that make everything click. Filming locations get even more specific when you dig in. Beyond the broad Massachusetts sweep, Haverhill for the Home Mart, a real Home Depot store they redressed, Salisbury for industrial grit, Hamilton, Ipswich, including Castle Hill at the Crane Estate standing in for a lavish Moscow mansion, Swampscott and Chelsea for the iconic diner on Everett Avenue. They captured Boston's essence perfectly. McCall's apartment has a view toward the Tobin Bridge. He rides the T, including the 117 bus to Maverick. There's a quick shot of the Zachem Bunker Hill Bridge, and even Beacon Hill pops up in establishing shots. The crew used East Boston streets, Meridian and Condor for some exteriors, and Ryan Playground for Ralphie's security guard training scenes. They even filmed near the Leonard P. Zakim Bridge and in Quincy areas. The production leaned into New England's moody weather, rain, fog, neon reflections, for that film noir atmosphere, making the city feel alive and threatening. Goofs and quirks add charm too. One minor continuity thing. A scene shows McCall on a Red Line train, but the interior looks more like the narrower Orange Line, probably reused footage from earlier. But it doesn't detract. The film's so tight overall. In interviews around release, Denzel talked about the role's appeal. The idea of someone who's seen the worst of the world but still chooses to help the vulnerable. He emphasized that McCall doesn't see himself as a hero. He's just a guy who can't stand by when the odds are unfair. Fuqua echoed that, saying the film is about ordinary people facing extraordinary evil, and one man deciding enough is enough. As we edge closer to wrapping this marathon tribute, remember why this movie endures. It's not just the bone-crunching action or Denzel's star power. It's the quiet buildup, the moral core, the satisfaction of seeing justice delivered methodically. In 2026, with the sequels having expanded the world and the Queen Latifah series keeping the spirit alive, the original still stands tallest for its purity. If you're just tuning in, pull up a chair because we're still deep in the world of The Equalizer from 2014, the film that proves sometimes the quietest guy in the room is the most dangerous. I'm your narrator, walking you through every single fascinating detail so you can appreciate this movie on a whole new level before you hit play. We've already hit on Denzel's OCD-inspired performance tweaks, Chloë Grace Moretz's intense research, the practical stunts, the Boston grit in every location, the clever callbacks to the original TV show, and how this film launched a franchise that's still thriving in 2026. But there's plenty more to uncover. Let's keep the energy high with even deeper trivia, production gems, goofs that add charm, and those little Easter eggs that make fans smile on repeat viewings. One of the coolest things is how the final pull-away shot of the movie pays direct homage to Edward Hopper's famous painting, Nighthawks. You know that iconic diner scene with the lonely people under fluorescent lights at night? The way the camera lingers on the diner window, capturing that isolated, moody glow, it's a deliberate nod to Hopper's masterpiece. It fits perfectly with the film's noir vibe, emphasizing McCall's solitary life amid the city's shadows. Antoine Fuqua has a real eye for these artistic touches. He uses visual storytelling to say as much as the dialogue does. Another fun Easter egg for fans of the 1980s TV series. The classic black Jaguar XJ6 that Edward Woodward's Equalizer drove makes a cameo in the background during one key scene. It's parked quietly, almost like a subtle tribute, reminding longtime viewers where this character came from while keeping the modern Denzel version fresh and distinct. On the goof side, because no movie is perfect, and these little slip-ups often become endearing, there's a continuity thing in the diner scenes. Early on, the building to the left has doors and trees visible. But later, when McCall returns, that same view looks different. It's minor, but eagle-eyed viewers spot it. Another one. In a flashback, McCall wears his wedding ring on his right hand instead of the left, which in some cultures signals a widower, perhaps a subtle hint at his past losses, or just a small oversight. And during the big Home Mart showdown, after the power gets cut, McCall grabs welding canisters that realistically wouldn't behave quite that way in a blackout, but hey, it amps up the drama without breaking immersion. Filming locations get even more specific when you zoom in. Beyond the big ones like Haverhill's Home Depot, transformed into Home Mart, to Salisbury's industrial warehouses for those tense interiors, and Ipswich's Crane Estate at Castle Hill standing in for the opulent Moscow mansion, there are street-level gems. The iconic Bridge Diner exteriors were shot at 25 Everett Avenue in Chelsea, Massachusetts, a real 24-hour spot that captured that late-night rain-slicked authenticity. McCall's apartment views include the Tobin Bridge and Mystic River, grounding him in East Boston's working-class feel. He rides the real MBTA, the 117 bus to Maverick via Beach Street, glimpses of the Red Line, though one interior shot reused Orange Line footage for continuity. Ryan Playground in Boston doubled for Ralphie's security guard training scenes. Meridian and Condor Streets in East Boston hosted some outdoor shoots, even with Denzel spotted spreading good vibes between takes. Beacon Hill pops up in establishing shots, and the Zachem Bunker Hill Bridge gets those sweeping helicopter flyovers to scream Boston without overdoing it. The crew leaned into Massachusetts' natural weather, humid summers, sudden rains, for that authentic, moody atmosphere. No heavy VFX needed. Denzel's involvement went beyond acting. He called Antoine Fuqua personally to do the movie, reuniting after Training Day. Fuqua has shared how Denzel grounded the whole project. His everyman appeal made the vigilante justice feel righteous instead of reckless. Fuqua was fresh off Olympus Has Fallen and initially unavailable, but when Denzel reached out, everything clicked. On set, Fuqua kept 50-pound dumbbells outside his trailer, maybe for workouts, maybe just to flex, while Denzel focused on nailing the character's calm intensity. They trained extensively together for the hand-to-hand combat, long takes, minimal cuts, so you feel every precise move. Denzel performed many stunts himself, making the fights brutal yet stylish. The quote that opens the film, "The two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why," is attributed to Mark Twain, but it's actually of unknown origin. Still, it sets the perfect tone for McCall rediscovering his purpose. In interviews, Fuqua talked about envisioning McCall as someone doing the right thing in a wrong world. He loved how Denzel could handle bad guys with such controlled power. It made the film feel grounded and exciting. The pair's trust was key, no second-guessing, just pure collaboration. As we keep building this case, think about why The Equalizer feels timeless in 2026. It's the rare action film that balances heart-pounding sequences with real emotional weight. McCall's quiet routines, reading classics, timing his coffee, helping coworkers, make the explosions of justice feel earned. It's empowering without being preachy, stylish without being flashy. If you're still locked in with me on this massive love letter to The Equalizer 2014, thank you. Seriously, your patience is turning this into the ultimate companion guide before you watch or rewatch the movie. We're way past the basics now, so let's keep mining those hidden gems, production whispers, actor insights, and cultural ripples that make this film feel like it was built with obsessive care. No spoilers, just more fuel to get you excited to see Denzel Washington at his most magnetic. One of the quietest but most powerful choices in the entire film is how McCall almost never raises his voice. Even in moments of extreme threat, his tone stays measured, almost polite, until it doesn't need to be. That restraint comes straight from Denzel. In interviews around the release, he explained that he wanted McCall to feel like someone who's already seen every version of anger and decided it's inefficient. The real power, he said, is in the calm before the storm. Fuqua loved that approach because it flips the usual action hero trope. Instead of screaming threats, McCall speaks softly and carries the biggest improvised arsenal. It's chilling, and it makes every word land like a promise. Another layer worth savoring is how the movie uses time as a character. That stopwatch isn't just a quirk. It's McCall measuring control in a world that's spiraling out of it. Every fight scene is timed on screen. You can literally see the seconds ticking, turning chaos into something almost mathematical. Denzel practiced those sequences with a real stopwatch running, syncing his breathing and movements to the countdown. The crew even built a custom digital insert for close-ups, so the timing looked precise without cutting away. It's one of those details that rewards paying attention. The longer a fight drags, the more you feel McCall's frustration, like the universe is wasting his perfectly ordered time. Let's talk food for a second because the diner scenes are loaded with meaning. McCall's ritual order, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, isn't random. It's comfort food, simple and unchanging, the opposite of the unpredictable violence he used to live in. When he shares meals with Terry or chats with the regulars, it's his way of staying connected to normal life. The diner itself, shot at the Real Bridge Diner in Chelsea, Massachusetts, had that lived-in smell of grease and coffee that the actors said helped them stay in character. Chloë Grace Moretz has mentioned how those quiet counter-conversations with Denzel felt like real mentorship off-camera too. He gave her acting advice between takes, treating her like family. The Russian mob elements were researched with surprising depth. Richard Wenk and the team looked into actual Eastern European organized crime networks operating in the U.S., particularly around human trafficking and money laundering. They consulted former law enforcement sources to make sure the hierarchy, the fear factor, and the casual brutality rang true. Marton Csokas didn't just learn the accent. He studied body language from real interviews with former enforcers, adopting that unnerving stillness where violence is always one breath away. It makes Teddy one of the more believable big bads in modern action cinema. On the technical side, the sound team went nuts with Foley work. Every tool McCall picks up, every hammer strike, every nail gun pop, every corkscrew twist was recorded live with the actual objects on a Foley stage. They layered in subtle reverb for the warehouse scenes, so the space feels cavernous and echoey. The rain? They recorded real New England downpours during location shoots and mixed them into the track, giving those outdoor moments a tactile wet weight. Harry Gregson Williams' score plays beautifully against that. Sparse electronic drones during McCall's routines, then sudden orchestral stabs when things turn violent. The silence between notes is as important as the music itself. A sweet behind-the-scenes moment. During a break in the Home Mart set, Denzel started helping real Home Depot employees, who were extras, stock shelves properly, showing them the most efficient way to face products. The crew caught it on video, him in character clothes teaching strangers how to make a display look perfect. It's peak McCall energy leaking into real life. As for cultural footprint in 2026, the film is still quoted everywhere. Okay became a meme shorthand for "I'm about to ruin your whole operation," thanks to one perfectly delivered line. TikTok and YouTube are full of Equalizer edits, syncing fight scenes to modern trap beats or motivational speeches. It's referenced in everything from stand-up comedy to police procedural shows as the gold standard for competent older guy takes down bad guys storytelling. The sequel's built on that foundation, but the original simplicity, man, diner, problem, solution, remains untouchable. One last production tidbit before we start winding down. The film originally had a longer opening sequence showing more of McCall's pre-retirement life, but test audiences found it slowed the pace too much. Fuqua and the editors cut it down to the essentials, letting flashbacks and subtle hints do the heavy lifting instead. That restraint keeps the movie lean at 132 minutes, long enough to breathe, short enough to never drag. We're getting close to the finish line here, but every new detail just makes me love this movie more. It's the perfect storm of star power, smart direction, grounded action, and a heart that beats underneath all the violence. If you've never seen it, tonight's the night. If you have, grab a coffee, dim the lights, and watch how every tiny choice adds up to something unforgettable. We're still cruising through this ultimate celebration of The Equalizer 2014, the movie that makes you believe one determined person with the right skills can tip the scales in a broken world. If you've been riding along from the start, you already know the deep cuts. Denzel's OCD research and stopwatch obsession, Chloë Grace Moretz's real-world prep for her role, the practical Boston shoots that turned everyday locations into cinematic gold, the Easter eggs nodding to the 1980s TV series, the restrained violence that never feels gratuitous, and how this film quietly launched one of the most consistent action franchises still running strong in 2026. But there's always another layer to peel back. Let's keep going with more of those insider details, thoughtful choices, and quiet moments that make the movie sing every single time. One thing that often gets overlooked is how deliberately the film avoids showing McCall's full past. We get flashes, old photos, brief phone calls, cryptic conversations with Susan and Brian, but nothing concrete. That restraint is pure genius. Fuqua and Wenk wanted the audience to fill in the blanks themselves. Is he ex-CIA, Special Forces, something even darker? The mystery keeps you invested because you're piecing together who this man really is right alongside the people in his new life. Denzel has said in press rounds that he loved playing someone who carries so much history without needing to explain it all. It makes McCall feel like a real person with a real weight on his shoulders, not a backstory dump. The diner isn't just a setting, it's practically a sanctuary. Every time McCall walks in, the lighting softens a little. The music shifts to something warmer. The regulars greet him like family. It's the one place where he can pretend the old life doesn't exist. The choice to film those scenes at the actual Bridge Diner in Chelsea gave them an irreplaceable authenticity. The counter stools creak the same way. The coffee smells the same. The fluorescent hum is the same. Chloë Grace Moretz has talked about how sitting at that counter with Denzel felt protective and safe, even when the script called for vulnerability. Off camera, he'd check in on her, make sure she was comfortable during long night shoots, turning the set into a little family just like the diner is for McCall. Let's talk about the color palette for a second because it's sneaky brilliant. The whole movie lives in cool blues, grays, and muted greens, cold, industrial, almost clinical. Then, tiny pops of warmth break through. The orange glow of the diner's sign, the yellow of a taxi light, the soft amber in McCall's apartment lamp when he's reading. Those warm accents are reserved for moments of connection or calm. When the violence erupts, the palette snaps back to cold steel and shadow. Mauro Fiore's cinematography uses that contrast to guide your emotions without you even realizing it. It's visual storytelling at its most subtle. Another small but powerful choice. McCall reads physical books. No e-reader, no phone screen, just old paperbacks he carries in his coat pocket. The Old Man and the Sea at the start. Then later, classics like Invisible Man and Don Quixote. Those titles aren't random. Hemingway's story of an aging man fighting impossible odds mirrors McCall's own quiet battle. Ralph Ellison's exploration of invisibility speaks to how McCall has chosen to disappear into ordinary life. Cervantes' Night Tilting at Windmills echoes the idea of one person standing against overwhelming corruption. Denzel picked some of those books himself during prep, wanting McCall's reading to reflect a man searching for meaning after a lifetime of orders and missions. On set, the hardware store sequences were a logistical beast. They didn't just dress a real Home Depot, they kept most of the inventory stocked and functional so actors could grab real tools during fights. Safety rigs were hidden everywhere, but the crew still had to choreograph around live nail guns, circular saws, and power drills. Keith Woolard's stunt team ran rehearsals for weeks, timing every move to the stopwatch so Denzel could sync his performance perfectly. One take had a minor mishap where a prop hammer slipped and dented a set piece. Denzel just laughed, reset, and nailed the next take even harder. That kind of professionalism kept morale sky high during the long nights. The score has its own hidden stories too. Harry Gregson Williams composed several alternate cues that never made the final cut, more aggressive electronic versions for some fights. But Fuqua ultimately went with the restrained, pulsing tracks because he wanted the audience to feel McCall's control rather than bombastic heroism. The end credits song Guts Over Fear by Eminem and Sia was a late addition. The studio heard an early assembly and realized they needed something that captured the character's inner fire without being too on the nose. Eminem wrote it specifically for the film, drawing from his own battles with doubt and comeback energy. It lands like a mic drop after everything McCall has been through. In 2026, the movie's cultural staying power is undeniable. It's become shorthand for competent older guy justice in memes, reaction videos, and even training montages on fitness channels. People still post clips of the hardware store scene with captions like, "When the group project goes wrong." The sequels expanded the lore, but the original's economy, 132 minutes of pure, focused storytelling, remains the benchmark. No wasted scenes, no unnecessary subplots, just a man, a problem, and the will to fix it. One more production whisper. During the wrap party, Denzel surprised the crew by showing up in full Home Mart uniform, apron, name tag, the works, and spent the night helping people with their drinks like he was still on shift. Fuqua called it the perfect send-off for a character who never really leaves the job behind. We're getting toward the home stretch now, but every new detail just reinforces why this film is special. It's thrilling, thoughtful, human, and rewatchable to death. If all this has you itching to see it again, or for the first time, go make it happen. Pour yourself that black coffee, dim the lights, listen for the stopwatch tick, and let Denzel remind you what real strength looks like. We're powering through this epic, no-holds-barred tribute to The Equalizer 2014, the thriller that turns a quiet hardware store worker into an unstoppable force of justice, all while keeping you on the edge without ever feeling cartoonish. If you've been with me from the beginning, you've got the full picture by now. Denzel's layered take on Robert McCall, complete with his self-added OCD traits born from deep research. Chloë Grace Moretz's brave, authentic prep for Terry. The rain-soaked, real-deal Boston streets that give the film its brooding soul. The practical tool-based fights that feel earned and brutal. Those clever nods to the old TV series, and how this movie kicked off a franchise that's still delivering thrills in 2026. But let's not stop yet. There's always one more fascinating corner to explore. Let's dive into some more standout trivia, actor insights, and those subtle choices that make the film endlessly rewatchable. One of the most talked about additions Denzel brought to the table was McCall's obsessive-compulsive tendencies. The original script left his backstory wide open, almost blank, so Denzel filled it in himself. He dove into books and articles on obsession and OCD, then went further. He actually met and interviewed several real people living with the condition to capture it authentically. In interviews, he explained how he built a personal backstory where McCall's past, whatever shadowy work he did, left him with post-traumatic stress that showed up as these rigid rituals. The stopwatch, the precise breakfast setup, the way he scans a room and notices every tiny detail. It's all tied to that. Denzel said it helped him understand a man trying to control a world that once spun out of his grasp, especially after losing his wife. It's not played for laughs or as a gimmick. It's a quiet window into why McCall needs order so badly and why chaos pushes him to act. That same depth shows in how Denzel approached the physical side. He was already in great shape, but he ramped it up with daily training, fight choreography, hand-to-hand drills, even learning to use ordinary objects like weapons with deadly efficiency. He did a ton of his own stunts, insisting on long takes so the audience could see the precision without quick cuts hiding anything. Fuqua backed him fully, wanting the action to feel organic and real, drawn from research into actual combat techniques rather than Hollywood flair. It's why those sequences in the diner or the warehouse hit so hard. They're methodical, almost clinical, mirroring McCall's mindset. Chloë Grace Moretz's commitment deserves another spotlight too. Fuqua has shared that she went deep into research for her role, including conversations with real people in similar tough spots. One piece of advice stuck with her. To add some realism to the physicality, she adjusted her look slightly for the part. It wasn't about glamour, it was about truth, and that vulnerability makes her scenes with Denzel feel so genuine. Their diner chats, the protective glances, the way he quietly looks out for her, it all stems from real chemistry built on set, where he'd offer quiet encouragement during those intense night shoots. The film's test screenings were legendary. It apparently scored the highest positive feedback and reactions of any R-rated Sony movie up to that point. People loved the empowerment, the clever use of everyday items in fights, and Denzel's unflappable cool. That validation pushed the team to keep things tight. No fluff, just pure momentum from the slow-burn setup to the explosive payoff. Locations-wise, Massachusetts really delivered. Beyond the big ones like Haverhill's Home Depot, redressed as Home Mart, Salisbury's warehouses for those shadowy interiors, and Ipswich's stunning crane estate at Castle Hill standing in for the lavish villain hideout. There are street-level details that ground everything. The Bridge Diner exteriors at 25 Everett Avenue in Chelsea captured that classic late-night glow. McCall's East Boston apartment offers views toward the Tobin Bridge and Mystic River, while he hops on the real MBTA, the 117 bus to Maverick, glimpses of the Red Line, with one interior mix-up using Orange Line footage. Ryan Playground hosted Ralphie's training scenes, Meridian and Condor Streets in East Boston saw some outdoor action, and Beacon Hill snuck into establishing shots. The Zakim Bunker Hill Bridge gets those sweeping flyovers to anchor the Boston vibe. Fuqua used the city's natural mood, humid summers turning to rain, to build atmosphere without faking it. Little callbacks keep popping up on rewatches. McCall's joke about being a Pip from Gladys Knight and the Pips gets paid off beautifully when Midnight Train to Georgia blasts over the Home Mart speakers during the hostage scene. Same group, same song, tying humor to high stakes. And yes, the original Black Jaguar XJ6 from Edward Woodward's TV Equalizer sneaks into a background shot, a quiet wink to fans of the source material. In interviews, Fuqua has talked about wanting McCall to feel like an everyman doing the right thing in a wrong world. He and Denzel trusted each other completely after training day. No ego clashes, just collaboration. Fuqua even kept dumbbells outside his trailer on set, maybe for his own workouts amid the chaos. As 2026 rolls on, this film's influence is everywhere, from memes of that intense stare to edit-syncing fights to modern tracks. It's the blueprint for grounded vigilante stories, where the hero's skills come from experience, not superpowers. The sequels expanded it, but the original's lean focus, 132 minutes of building tension and release, remains perfect. We're nearing the end of this marathon, but every fact just makes the movie shine brighter. It's thrilling, heartfelt, and empowering in the best way. If this has you ready to dive back in, grab that remote. Watch for the stopwatch ticks, the diner warmth, the rain on Boston streets, and Denzel's quiet storm. If you're still here with me on this marathon deep dive into The Equalizer 2014, you're a true movie lover. Thank you for hanging in there. We're uncovering every last detail about this modern classic. Denzel Washington's transformative work as Robert McCall, Antoine Fuqua's masterful direction that reunites their training day magic, the grounded Boston grit, the inventive practical action, and how it all builds to that satisfying sense of justice served cold and precise. We've talked OCD research, diner rituals, Easter eggs like the original TV show's Jaguar cameo, goofs that sneak in, and the film's lasting vibe in 2026. But let's keep the spotlight rolling with even more insider stories, quotes from the stars, and those thoughtful touches that elevate it from good action to something special. Denzel Washington didn't just step into the role, he basically rebuilt it from the ground up. The script originally had almost no backstory for McCall, leaving him as this mysterious, skilled guy with a quiet life. Denzel saw the opportunity and ran with it. He added the obsessive-compulsive disorder layer himself, drawing from real research. In interviews, he explained how he read up on obsession and compulsive behavior, then developed a personal backstory where McCall's past, whatever shadowy Black Ops work it was, caused damage, maybe post-traumatic stress after losing his wife. That trauma manifests in the rituals, timing everything, noticing every tiny detail like a person's shoes or how objects are arranged. He even interviewed several real people living with OCD to get the portrayal accurate, not exaggerated or played for laughs. Denzel said it helped him understand a man who's been through hell and now clings to control in small ways. In one chat, he noted they cut some OCD moments, like repeated door opening and closing, because it would have dragged the pace. But what remains feels authentic and human. That same dedication shows in his prep for the action. Denzel trained hard daily, physical conditioning, fight choreography, learning to turn everyday items into weapons with lethal efficiency. He did many stunts himself, pushing for longer takes so you see the precision without edits hiding flaws. Fuqua has praised how Denzel grounded the violence. It's not flashy, it's controlled, almost surgical, reflecting McCall's mindset. In a set interview, Denzel talked about keeping the mystery alive. He likes that we don't know everything about McCall's past because it lets the audience wonder and fill in gaps. Chloë Grace Moretz fought tooth and nail for Terry. The role was written for someone around 24, but at 16, she auditioned repeatedly, and wowed Fuqua so much he aged the character down. She dove deep into research, speaking with real people in similar vulnerable positions to capture the fear, resilience, and strength without cliches. Fuqua has shared how seriously she took it, even adjusting aspects of her look for realism based on advice from those conversations. Her chemistry with Denzel feels effortless. The diner scenes where he quietly supports her, shares a meal, offers subtle protection. It's like watching a genuine bond form. Offset, Denzel was protective and encouraging, giving her tips like a mentor, which bled into their performances. Fuqua himself has shared great stories about reuniting with Denzel. After training day, they stayed in touch, but life got busy. When Denzel called about The Equalizer, Fuqua was just off Olympus Has Fallen and not immediately available. But the script and the chance to work together again made it happen fast. Fuqua said Denzel's everyman appeal was key. He makes McCall relatable, likable, and when he unleashes, it's terrifying because you've seen the quiet side first. They trusted each other completely, no big egos, just collaboration. Fuqua even kept dumbbells outside his trailer during shoots, maybe for his own stress relief amid the intensity. The film's test screenings were electric. It reportedly got the highest positive reactions for any R-rated Sony film at the time. Crowds loved the empowerment fantasy, the clever improvised kills, and Denzel's calm intensity. That feedback helped keep it lean and focused. Locations keep revealing themselves on rewatches. The Bridge Diner at 25 Everett Avenue in Chelsea is that perfect late-night spot with neon and grease. East Boston streets like Meridian and Condor hosted outdoor scenes, with Denzel spotted chatting with locals between takes. Ryan Playground stood in for Ralphie's security training. Beacon Hill sneaks into transitions, the Zachem Bunker Hill Bridge gets those iconic flyovers, and the Tobin Bridge view from McCall's apartment roots him in working-class Eastie. Crane Estate at Castle Hill in Ipswich became the lavish villain spot, stunning grounds contrasting the urban grit. The crew used real Massachusetts weather, rain, fog, for mood without heavy effects. Trivia keeps surprising. The opening quote about life's two most important days, birth and finding your why, is often misattributed to Mark Twain, but it's actually unknown. In a flashback, McCall's wedding ring is on his right hand. Some cultures see that as a widower sign, a subtle hint. The Pip joke pays off with Midnight Train to Georgia blasting during the hostage crisis. And that Jaguar from the TV series? It parks quietly in the background during one intense moment, a fan service nod. In 2026, the movie's still quoted, memed, and rewatched. It's the blueprint for skilled, older heroes who don't need gadgets, just experience and resolve. The sequels built bigger worlds, but the original simplicity shines. Thanks for staying locked in with me through this massive, detailed journey into The Equalizer from 2014, the movie that proves sometimes the most powerful heroes are the ones who live quietly among us until justice calls. If you've been following along, you already know the heart of it. Denzel Washington's unforgettable Robert McCall, Antoine Fuqua's tense and stylish direction reuniting their training day chemistry, the authentic Boston locations that make the city feel alive and dangerous, the clever practical stunts using everyday hardware tools, those subtle Easter eggs to the 1980s TV series, and how the film turned a modest $55 million budget into over $192 million worldwide success while launching a franchise that's still strong in 2026. But we're not done exploring yet. Let's keep uncovering more of those hidden gems, actor stories, and thoughtful decisions that make this film such a must-watch for anyone craving smart, grounded action with real emotional depth. Richard Wenck's script is a big part of why it works so well. He took the core idea from the original TV series, created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim, where a mysterious operative places newspaper ads to help people in need, and updated it for today without losing the soul. Wenck has said in interviews that he wanted McCall to feel like a man who's retired from darkness, but gets pulled back when he sees true injustice up close. He drew from real-world issues like human trafficking and corrupt networks to make the stakes feel immediate and relevant. Wenck consulted with former intelligence folks to keep McCall's skills believable, but never over the top. No gadgets, just experience, timing, and resourcefulness. The result is a story that starts slow and deliberate, building McCall's ordinary world before ramping into high tension, all in a tight 132-minute runtime that never wastes a second. Denzel has shared some great insights about his process. In one press conference, he talked about how playing McCall felt personal because it reminded him of his own discipline in acting, preparing meticulously, showing up ready, controlling what you can. He loved that the character reads books like The Old Man and the Sea because it mirrors the struggle of an aging fighter refusing to give up against impossible odds. Denzel even suggested some of the literary touches himself during prep, wanting McCall's quiet moments to reveal a thoughtful man beneath the surface. Fuqua backed those choices completely, saying Denzel's input made the performance richer and more layered than any script alone could. On the supporting side, Marton Csokas brought chilling authenticity to Teddy by studying real, organized crime figures and focusing on stillness over shouting. He wanted the villain to feel like someone who enjoys the power imbalance, making every scene with him pulse with dread. David Harbour's corrupt cop adds that layer of systemic frustration. His bluster and intimidation feel real because Harbour bulked up and worked on a Boston edge to the accent. Even smaller roles shine. Johnny Scortis as Ralphie brings heart and humor with his security guard dreams, inspired by real conversations Fuqua had with store workers during research. Haley Bennett as Mandy and the diner crew make those scenes feel like a real community, the kind of place McCall clings to for normalcy. The editing by John Refoua deserves credit for keeping everything crisp. He balances the slow-burn character beats with accelerating action, using quick cuts only when needed, and holding longer shots during fights to show Denzel's precision. One clever choice. The stopwatch inserts are timed exactly to the on-screen action, so you feel McCall's internal clock ticking right along with you. Visual effects were minimal, mostly enhancing rain, bullet impacts, or reflections, because Fuqua insisted on practical work for realism. Companies like Zero VFX handled the subtle touches without ever overpowering the grounded feel. Audience reactions around the world were strong too. In the US, it dominated opening weekend with $34 million, holding strong through word of mouth. Internationally, it connected in places like the UK, Australia, and even Russia. Despite the plot elements, action fans loved the inventive fights regardless. The 76% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes shows people connected with the empowerment fantasy. One skilled person evening the odds for those who can't. Critics might have called it familiar territory, but audiences praised the heart, the pacing, and Denzel's charisma making it fresh. In today's 2026 landscape, The Equalizer still feels relevant because it taps into that universal desire to see fairness restored. Amid big superhero spectacles, this grounded story reminds us ordinary people, with training, resolve, and the right moment, can make a difference. It's influenced countless older hero roles since proving age brings wisdom, not weakness. The sequels expanded the universe, but this original stands alone as the purest version. Man meets problem, problem meets Equalizer. One more fun production note. During a warehouse shoot, a sudden rainstorm hit, but instead of rapping, Fuqua rolled with it, using the real weather to make the slick floors and reflections even more dramatic. Denzel just adjusted his timing and kept going. Professionalism at its best. We're still rolling strong on this ultimate no stone unturned celebration of The Equalizer 2014. The film that takes a seemingly ordinary retired guy, gives him a moral compass sharper than any blade, and lets him quietly dismantle injustice with surgical precision. If you've been listening from the start, you've got the full mosaic now. Denzel's deeply researched OCD traits that make McCall feel like a real human under pressure. Chloë Grace Moretz's brave commitment to authenticity in her role, the rain-drenched Boston streets that breathe life into every frame, the hardware store ingenuity of the action sequences, those loving nods to the Edward Woodward TV series, and the way this movie quietly became the foundation for a franchise that's still delivering in 2026. But let's keep the spotlight on. There's always one more angle, one more story, one more detail that makes you appreciate it even more. Let's zoom in on the sound design for a moment because it's one of the unsung heroes. The entire film lives in a world of crisp, deliberate audio. Every footstep in an empty warehouse echoes just enough to make the space feel vast and lonely. The metallic clank of a tool being picked up rings with weight. Rain hitting pavement isn't background noise. It's textured, layered, almost rhythmic, matching McCall's internal clock. The Foley artists recorded real objects on a stage, actual corkscrews twisting into wood, real nail guns firing into concrete, hammers striking with authentic force. They even captured the subtle click of McCall's Sunto watch bezel turning, amplifying it so you feel every second he's counting. When the score by Harry Gregson Williams drops out completely during tense moments, the silence becomes deafening. Then a single distant siren or dripping pipe creeps in, ratcheting the dread. It's immersive without ever being loud for the sake of it. Fuqua wanted you to feel like you're right there with McCall, hearing what he hears, noticing what he notices. The literary references in McCall's reading list deserve another shout-out because they're so perfectly chosen. He starts with Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, an old fighter refusing to quit against a giant marlin, battling alone on the water. Later, you catch glimpses of Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, a story about being unseen in society, which mirrors how McCall has chosen to vanish into a normal life after his past. And Don Quixote sneaks in too, a man tilting at windmills, seeing injustice where others see nothing. Denzel has said he personally suggested some of those titles during prep, wanting McCall to be someone who reads to understand the human condition, not just to pass time. It's a beautiful contrast. This man who can end lives with a hammer also spends evenings lost in profound books. Those quiet reading scenes in his sparse apartment are some of the most powerful in the film. They show the soul before the storm. Fun set story. During one of the long night shoots at the Chelsea Diner, the real owner kept the kitchen open for the crew. Denzel, still in character clothes, ended up behind the counter for a bit, pouring coffee for extras and crew like he was actually working the shift. The owner later said it was the most surreal night of his life, having Denzel Washington serve coffee in his own diner. Moments like that kept the energy high even at 3 a.m. The film's color timing is another subtle masterstroke. The palette stays cool and desaturated, steel blues, concrete grays, rainy greens, making the world feel cold and unforgiving. Then, tiny warm accents break through exactly when McCall connects with someone. The soft orange of the diner neon reflecting on faces, the yellow glow of his bedside lamp while reading, the faint amber in a shared smile. Those warm pops are rare and deliberate, reserved for humanity amid the darkness. Mauro Fiore's cinematography uses that contrast to pull your emotions along without a single word. In 2026, fans still celebrate the film's restraint. No shaky cam chaos, no endless slow motion, no forced one-liners. The violence is graphic when it needs to be, but it's purposeful, showing consequences, not glorifying. McCall doesn't revel in it. He does what must be done, then goes back to timing his breakfast. That moral clarity, combined with Denzel's magnetic presence, is why people keep coming back. It's cathartic in the best way. You root for the Equalizer because he represents the part of us that wishes the world could be made fair, one calculated move at a time. One last behind-the-scenes whisper before we start to wind down. During post-production, they experimented with a slightly longer cut that included more of McCall's daily routine, extra scenes of him at Home Mart, more diner conversations, but test audiences felt it slowed the momentum. Fuqua trusted the feedback and trimmed it back, keeping the film lean and relentless. That discipline is why it clocks in at a perfect 132 minutes. Every second earns its place. We're deep into the final stretch of this epic, heartfelt tribute to The Equalizer 2014, the film that quietly became one of the most satisfying modern action thrillers ever made. If you've stuck with me through all these chapters, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your patience has turned this into the most complete companion guide imaginable before you settle in to watch or rewatch Denzel Washington at his absolute peak. We've covered everything from his personal additions to the character, like the OCD rituals born from real interviews and research, to Chloë Grace Moretz's courageous prep, the authentic Massachusetts locations that make Boston feel like a living, breathing backdrop, the practical, tool-based fights that feel inventive yet brutally real, the subtle Easter eggs honoring the 1980s TV roots, the restrained yet powerful score, the lean 132-minute runtime that never wastes a beat, and the way this movie launched a franchise that's still going strong in 2026. But let's keep savoring a few more of those special, lesser-spoken-about elements that make the film linger long after the credits roll. One of the most beautiful things about The Equalizer is how it uses silence as a weapon. There are long stretches, especially in the early acts, where McCall says very little. He observes, he listens, he times things. The dialogue is sparse on purpose. Fuqua and Wenk wanted the audience to feel McCall's isolation before they feel his power. Denzel has talked about loving those quiet beats because they let the audience lean in, wondering what this calm man is capable of. When he finally speaks in those measured, almost gentle tones, every word carries double the weight. It's the opposite of the shouting, quip-heavy action heroes we often see. McCall doesn't need to yell to be terrifying. He just needs to decide you're the problem, and then the problem gets solved. The mentorship dynamic between McCall and Terry is another quiet masterpiece. It's not loud or sentimental, it's built in small gestures, a shared coffee, a knowing look across the diner counter, the way he times how long it takes her to walk safely to her car. Those moments accumulate until you realize he's not just helping her out of a jam, he's quietly giving her back a piece of dignity and hope. Chloë Grace Moretz has said in interviews that shooting those diner scenes felt like real therapy sessions sometimes. Denzel would stay in character between takes, offering gentle advice or just sitting in comfortable silence. That off-screen bond translated directly to the screen, making their connection feel earned and heartfelt in a genre that often skips emotional layers. Let's give a quick nod to the costume and production design because they tell stories without words. Naomi Chauhan's team made McCall's world feel lived in and believable. His apartment is sparse but orderly, books stacked neatly, bed made with military precision, one framed photo hinting at a lost life. His home mart uniform is simple, practical, slightly worn, the clothes of someone who blends in on purpose. The villains, on the other hand, wear flashier suits, drive expensive cars, live in opulent spaces. That visual contrast underscores the theme. McCall fights for the everyday people against those who exploit power and wealth. Even the diner feels like a character. Warm wood tones, flickering neon, the hum of a real working-class hangout. Shooting at the actual Bridge Diner in Chelsea let all of that authenticity seep in naturally. A sweet, lesser-known production moment. During one of the warehouse night shoots, the crew had a minor electrical glitch that knocked out lights for a few minutes. Instead of panicking, Denzel grabbed a flashlight, started timing how long it would take to navigate the dark space blindfolded as practice for the character's skills, and turned it into an impromptu training session for the stunt team. Fuqua later said it was one of the coolest things he'd seen on set. Pure McCall energy leaking into real life. In 2026, looking back, The Equalizer stands out even more because it refuses to be cynical. It believes in the idea that one person, armed with skill, patience, and a sense of right and wrong, can push back against overwhelming odds. In a world full of chaotic blockbusters, this film's methodical pace and moral clarity feel almost radical. It's empowering without being preachy, violent without being nihilistic, and deeply human in the middle of all the action. We're truly nearing the end of this long, loving breakdown, but every new detail just reinforces why this movie deserves to be cherished. If you've never seen it, tonight is the night. If you have, maybe it's time for another viewing. Pay attention to the silences, the small kindnesses, the way the stopwatch ticks like a heartbeat. Pour that black coffee, dim the lights, and let Robert McCall remind you what quiet strength really looks like. We're truly in the home stretch now of this long, passionate deep dive into The Equalizer, 2014, the movie that still feels like a warm cup of black coffee and a perfectly timed plan to set things right. If you've been riding along with me through every chapter, thank you sincerely. Your attention has made this feel like we're sitting together late at night talking about one of the best modern action films ever crafted. We've unpacked Denzel's masterful, research-driven performance, the OCD rituals, the stopwatch obsession, the quiet moral code, Chloë Grace Moretz's heartfelt authenticity, the rain-slicked Boston authenticity that turns streets and diners into characters, the inventive hardware tool choreography, the loving nods to the original TV series, the restrained yet devastating score, the lean 132-minute pacing that never drags, and how this film quietly became the spark for a franchise that's still delivering satisfying justice in 2026. But let's savor just a few more of those final, beautiful details before I let you go hit play. One element that always hits me harder on rewatches is how McCall's life is built on small, repeatable acts of decency long before the big storm arrives. He helps Ralphie practice for his security guard exam, Not because it serves some larger plot, but because it's the right thing to do. He times how long it takes the elderly woman to cross the street, not to show off, but because he notices and cares. He listens to the diner regulars' stories without judgment. Those micro moments of kindness accumulate like interest in a bank account of goodwill. So, when injustice finally crosses his path, the audience already knows this isn't a man looking for trouble. This is a man who has been quietly choosing right every single day. Fuqua has said he wanted McCall to feel like the neighbor you never knew was a hero until the moment arrived. Denzel nailed that duality. The guy who could fix your sink one minute and end a threat the next. The way the film handles violence's aftermath is another layer worth appreciating. Unlike many action movies that cut away the second the fight ends, The Equalizer lingers just long enough to show consequences. The blood on the floor, the labored breathing, the moment McCall has to live with what he's done. It's never glorified, it's necessary, but it's heavy. That restraint keeps the moral center intact. McCall doesn't walk away grinning or cracking jokes. He straightens his jacket, checks his watch, and moves on because the job isn't finished until the vulnerable are safe. It's a mature take on vigilante justice that respects both the power and the cost. A tiny but lovely production detail: during the final warehouse sequence, the crew rigged real working lights and power tools so the environment reacted naturally to the action. When something gets knocked over or shot out, the sparks and flickers are genuine. Denzel worked with the stunt coordinator to make sure every improvised weapon felt like it belonged in that space. Nothing telegraphed, nothing forced. The result is a fight that feels like it could actually happen in a real abandoned industrial building on a rainy night in Massachusetts. In interviews over the years, Denzel has often circled back to one simple idea about the character. He's not trying to be a hero, he's just trying to make the odds even. That line sums up why the film resonates so deeply. In a world that frequently feels stacked against the little guy, watching someone methodically level the playing field is cathartic. It's not about revenge for revenge's sake, it's about protection, fairness, and refusing to look away when someone is being exploited. That core belief is why audiences still return to it, why the sequels keep working, and why the Queen Latifah TV version could carry the torch forward. As we finally start to close this chapter, I want to leave you with this. The Equalizer is the rare action thriller that gets better the more you notice. Notice the way McCall's eyes flick to every exit in a room. Notice how the diner light warms his face when he talks to Terry. Notice the exact second the stopwatch stops ticking because the job is done. Notice how the rain never feels like bad weather. It's atmosphere, tension, cleansing. Every element is there on purpose. So go make it happen. Dim the lights, grab your coffee, black 2 sugars if you're feeling fancy, press play, and let Robert McCall remind you what it looks like when one good man decides enough is enough. We're right at the edge of wrapping this epic, heartfelt marathon tribute to The Equalizer, 2014. The film that still feels like the perfect late-night watch when you need to believe one person can quietly fix what's broken. If you've been with me through every single chapter of this deep dive, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your time and attention have turned this into something special. The most complete, spoiler-free love letter and companion guide anyone could ask for before hitting play. We've explored Denzel's incredible self-driven additions to the character, the OCD rituals born from real interviews, the stopwatch as a symbol of reclaimed control, the quiet moral code that never wavers, Chloë Grace Moretz's brave and thoughtful preparation, the rain-soaked, neon-lit Boston authenticity that makes every street and diner feel alive, the ingenious practical action using hardware store tools in ways you'll never forget, those tender Easter eggs honoring Edward Woodward's original TV Equalizer, the pulsing yet restrained score by Harry Gregson Williams, the tight 132-minute runtime that builds tension like a coiled spring, the box office triumph on a smart $55 million budget, and how this movie quietly launched a franchise that's still delivering powerful, satisfying justice in 2026. But before I finally let you go and urge you to press play, let's linger on just a couple more of those small, perfect touches that make the film feel so human and rewatchable. First, the way McCall interacts with everyday objects is almost poetic. He doesn't just pick up a tool, he assesses it, weighs it in his hand, decides its purpose in a split second. It's the same way he assesses people. A quick glance at posture, eyes, hands, shoes. He sees potential threats and potential victims instantly. That hyper-awareness isn't superhuman. It's the scar tissue of a life spent in dangerous shadows. Denzel has said he practiced those micro-moments endlessly. How to hold a hammer not like a carpenter, but like a weapon. How to scan a room without turning his head too obviously. It's those tiny details that sell the idea that this man has lived a very different life before home mart aprons and diner coffee. Another quiet beauty is how the film treats its female characters with real respect. Terry isn't a damsel waiting to be saved. She's a young woman who survived terrible things and still holds on to dignity and hope. Mandy, the diner waitress, isn't just background. She's kind, observant, and part of the community McCall protects. Even the brief glimpses of other women in the story carry weight. They're not props. They're people whose safety matters. Fuqua and Wenk made deliberate choices to avoid cheap tropes, and it gives the film an emotional maturity that lifts it above typical revenge thrillers. One last production whisper that always makes me smile. During the wrap party after principal photography, Denzel surprised everyone by showing up wearing the full Home Mart uniform, apron, name tag, everything, and spent part of the night working the room, handing out drinks, asking if anyone needed help stocking imaginary shelves. The crew said it felt like McCall himself had shown up to say goodbye. That kind of playful commitment from the star says everything about why this performance feels so lived in. As 2026 keeps moving forward, The Equalizer remains a beacon in the action genre. In an era of massive CGI spectacles and endless franchises, this movie reminds us that the most powerful stories often come from the simplest premise. See someone being hurt, decide you can't stand by, act with skill and conscience. It's empowering, cathartic, and oddly comforting. One man, one problem, one equalizer. So here's my final nudge. Go watch it. Right now if you can. Make it dark, make it quiet, pour yourself that black coffee, listen for the tick of the stopwatch, feel the weight of every decision McCall makes. Let the diner neon glow, let the rain fall, let Denzel Washington remind you what real strength looks like when it's wrapped in calm resolve. If you've stayed with me through every single layer we've peeled back, thank you from the heart. You've turned what started as a simple recommendation into a full-on companion experience. Something you can keep open in another tab while you watch or revisit later when you want to relive why this movie hit so hard. We've covered Denzel's extraordinary ownership of the role, the self-researched OCD rituals, the stopwatch as both tool and metaphor, the deliberate quiet that makes his power feel inevitable. Chloë Grace Moretz's courageous authenticity, the lived-in Boston locations that make every rainy street and neon diner feel real. The practical, inventive fights that turn ordinary tools into instruments of justice, the subtle tributes to the Edward Woodward TV original, the masterful restraint in violence and pacing, Harry Gregson Williams' tense yet understated score, the $55 million budget that stretched into $192+ million worldwide success, and the enduring legacy that keeps the franchise alive and relevant in 2026. But before I finally hand you over to the movie itself, let's touch on just two more small, beautiful things that always get me every time I rewatch. The first is how McCall never once gloats. There's no victory speech, no smug one-liner, no lingering shot of him walking away in slow motion like he's the coolest guy in the room. When the job is done, he checks his watch, straightens his clothes, and moves on. Because for him, it's not about ego or revenge. It's about restoring balance and then returning to the quiet life he chose. That refusal to bask in triumph is rare in action cinema and makes him feel profoundly decent. Denzel has said in interviews that he wanted McCall to carry the weight of what he does, not celebrate it. You feel that weight in the small exhale he lets out, the brief moment he allows himself to look tired before he keeps going. It's heroic without being showy, and that's why it lingers. The second is the very last image of the film, the pullback from the diner window at night, the warm light inside contrasting the dark, wet street outside. It's a direct visual echo of Edward Hopper's Nighthawks, that famous painting of lonely people gathered under fluorescent lights in the small hours. Fuqua chose that framing deliberately. It says everything. McCall is back in his chosen place among ordinary people, safe for now, but always ready if the darkness creeps in again. The shot isn't triumphant. It's peaceful, almost melancholy, a reminder that heroes like him don't get happy endings. They get moments of quiet before the next call comes. It's one of the most elegant, understated closings in any action movie I can think of. So here we are. If you've made it this far, I think you're ready. Go watch The Equalizer tonight. Make it dark if you can. Pour yourself that black coffee. Let the opening credits roll with that quiet electronic pulse. Listen for the first tick of the stopwatch. Feel the slow build in the diner scenes. Notice how Denzel's eyes flick to every detail in a room. Let the rain fall on Boston streets. Let the tools become weapons. Let the odds get equalized. When it's over, I hope you feel that rare mix of exhilaration and calm satisfaction that only the best thrillers deliver. Thank you so much for joining me on this ridiculously long, loving journey through one of my all-time favorite films. You've been the ideal listener, engaged, patient, and clearly passionate about movies that matter. If you're feeling generous, drop a quick comment below. After everything we've talked about, what's the single scene or detail you're most excited to experience again or discover for the first time? A simple "watching tonight" or "rewatch queued" would make my day too. If you've somehow stayed with me from the very first hello through every single twist and turn of this endless love letter, then you and I have basically spent an entire evening together in the dark, talking about one film until the world outside faded away. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. You've given this deep dive a heartbeat simply by listening, by letting me ramble on about Denzel's stopwatch ticks, the diner's warm neon glow against rainy Boston nights, the way a corkscrew can become something far more terrifying than any gun when placed in the right hands, the subtle Hopper-inspired framing of that last pullback shot, the moral weight that lingers in the silence after every fight, and the simple, unshakable belief at the film's core that one person who refuses to look away can still shift the balance in a world that so often feels rigged against the vulnerable. There's one last tiny, almost invisible detail I want to leave you with before I finally release you to the movie itself. In the very first diner scene, when McCall sits alone at the counter ordering his usual 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, you can see if you look closely enough that his napkin is folded exactly the same way every single time he comes in. It's not mentioned, it's not pointed out, it's just there. One more small ritual in a life built on them. That napkin fold is the movie in miniature. Order, control, repetition as armor against chaos. And when that order is finally threatened, when someone else's life becomes the thing that can't be neatly folded and set aside, McCall doesn't explode in rage. He unfolds, methodically, precisely, inevitably. The napkin stays on the counter, but the man who folded it so carefully steps into the night and does what needs doing. It's the tiniest visual poetry, the kind of thing most people miss on first watch and then smile at on the 10th, because by then they've learned to see the world the way McCall sees it. Every detail matters, every second counts, every injustice is a countdown waiting to be stopped.